Welcome to Forging a Life podcast with Coach Christine Clark. Forging a Life is a Sunglow transformation production aired on Transformation Talk Radio and all your favorite podcast platforms. If you own a business, have a side hustle, desire to make the leap into self-employment, or just love human interest stories, Forging a Life podcast is for you. Christine Clark is an internationally certified transformational life coach. She is the coach for your entrepreneurial life, and these are her people. Jump into the fire with those forging success on their own terms with courage, tenacity, and resilience. These are men and women you could easily meet on the street in your own community. Gain wisdom, insight, knowledge, and inspiration each episode as these business owners get transparent with Coach Christine Clark, sharing their passions, challenges, and origin stories. This is Forging a Life.
Well, welcome to this edition of Forging a Life, and today we have Danny Mielneczek. He is a financial representative with Country Financial in Urbandale, Iowa. Welcome to the show, Danny. I'm so delighted to have you on.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
You are welcome. I want you to just tell us a little bit about what you do, what's your forte, and if you have a brand, identity that separates you from some of the other people that do financial representation, work with financial services. Just tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So here at my agency in Urbandale, we take a very individual approach. We sit down with clients one-on-one. We help them protect all facets of their life. It kind of starts in the garage with the home and the auto insurance, and that's just kind of one branch of the business. So the other half is protecting their financial security. I brand myself, so if you look up the hashtag Danny is my agent, that usually you can find me all over social media. I like to do a lot of stuff out and about and in the community. So that's kind of how I've been branding myself, through the hashtag Danny is my agent. And I've got a cool staff here. We run a pretty fun team over here. Yeah, I'd say that's how I differentiate myself, that one-on-one approach and being able to kind of tackle all aspects of protecting families.
Fun. So hashtag Danny is my agent. I love that.
I have clients that actually call me that too, which is kind of goofy, but yeah, it's fun. You kind of have to figure out a way to sort of, rise above. You got to be found, and you kind of got to rise above just the monotony. I thought that was a fun little way of, creating a different type of a brand. So I have it all over some swag here at the office. It's a fun little, nudge for who we are and what we do here.
Cool. Very cool. When you were 3 years old, you woke up one morning and decided that, hey, I want to do financial services, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it was Halloween one year, and I was like, I'm going to go dress up as a financial advisor. No, it's kind of a roundabout way. I grew up really liking business, all things business. I would say it kind of stemmed in high school. We had a marketing class. It was probably one of my favorite classes. And then we also did these, you've probably seen these football cards where the school sells them and they raise money for the football team and you get incentives around town. So I led our school in the sale of football cards. And so, I just really liked that one-on-one approach. And I think part of it was I just asked people, I just engaged in conversation. Do you go to McDonald's? Well, yeah, I go to McDonald's. What do you normally get? Well, I get 2 Big Macs, and well, this card will pay for itself in 2 visits. I sort of found a way to relate to individuals, and quite frankly, I just enjoyed conversation. I enjoyed the organic approach of just talking to folks, and ever since then, I knew I wanted to do something in marketing or business related.
Yeah, what I hear is you had a natural affinity for connecting with people and then being able to present whatever your product service was at the time.
Excuse me. Some of my friends would be like, "Oh, what's Danny going to sell us today in the cafeteria?" buy the last thing of Nerds Rope and try and upsell it in the cafeteria and, make some money that way. I had friends that, would joke about those things. I was the one laughing hardest when they had to work extra hard in football practice and leading the team in sales. I got to get out of a few little extra running activities, so that was fun for me.
Yeah. Incentive and reward. So love
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you went to college, did you go take a business route?
Yeah. I was kind of the straight arrow in college. I didn't really party a ton. I focused a lot more on involvement. I think I only missed one class my entire college career. I emailed the teacher in advance. My wife's grandfather had passed, and we knew we would have to drive up north for that. I was just always that guy. I really liked learning. I liked education. I liked being around people, that large kind of audience. But yeah, I got into a few different schools, and I chose Illinois State. My wife pursued interior design, which she works in now, and Illinois State at the time was one of the only schools in the state of Illinois that offered a program like that. So I didn't want to chance doing the whole long distance relationship thing and wanted to go to the same school as her. I got into their marketing program, and the rest was history. I'm on the board now for the Alumni Association for Illinois State, so there's a small little plug for you. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's hard around here because I kind of name drop ISU, and evidently there's some nearby school here in Iowa. That shares,
Yeah, in Iowa, right.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Uh-huh. Yes, absolutely. Tell me about having your eye on the prize when you were in college.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
For me, it was always, what's going to be the long-term goal. That was finding a career that was satisfying for me. I kind of learned pretty quick what kind of student I didn't want to be. And that's not to say we didn't have fun. We didn't, do things that, were childish and silly. Of course, there were those kind of times. I think the bigger thing was I always paid attention in class. I participated in the business world. And my wife teases me for this now. I think in terms of, I got maybe a 3.75 GPA, humble brag for you right there.
Yeah.
But I didn't really study for exams. I was reflecting on this with some colleagues and friends not too long ago. I don't know. I guess I just always understood the basic principles of the business world. And it was one of those things where I was that student where I took copious notes in class and jotted them down in my notebook, but then never once again read them. It was something about the process itself sort of made the information stick. So I always did really well at that, but a lot of what we did at Illinois State, we did a lot of project-oriented activities. One example of that was the sales sequence. Dr. Daniel Goebel was my professor at the time, and I think he's now at a university in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, but he was a fantastic professor. And Illinois State has a tremendous sales program, and at the time, what we did was we had to do a recording in front of the whole class. We had our separate room. One person was a sales associate where you were kind of giving your pitch, and the other person was sort of this decision maker for the company. And now they compete nationally. At the time I went there, it wasn't a substantial program like it is today, but it was just fascinating to me to see real world experience, and I just loved that. So because of that, it sort of made me realize, if I'm getting this great education and I'm paying every penny of it, mind you, I'm going to focus on, why I'm here and what I want it to do for me long term. And I take that with me still today, right? Why am I doing what I do, and how can I make a difference for my clients, for my community, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about that role-playing piece. Just
it was
one little piece that you learned or observed, because that's interesting to be in a classroom where people are doing one side and then the other, and then being put in the position of one side or the other. Just tell me about that role-playing experience.
One thing that really stood out to me was kind of this lack of preparation. And I'll elaborate a little bit. I think in the business world, a lot of those students, and I saw a lot of my other colleagues at the time, they made some big mistakes in that they tried to over prepare. And it doesn't work like that in the real world. You can't
No,
have a
no,
script
nobody
on it.
follows the script, do they?
Yeah, exactly. And that was an interesting piece for me, was you can sort of see elements where the students would look down and, sort of read from the script, and it kind of loses its meaning. It loses its significance, right? You're sitting in a room and you're trying to pitch this idea. You can learn all about the product you're trying to pitch. I think at the time we were like a payroll service, like ADP or something like that. We were sort of talking to a business owner on why we should implement this product into their practice. You familiarize yourself with the benefits, the features, but if you spend too much time just focusing on that, you're not listening to what's important to them, right?
Right,
Same thing in insurance. Outside of price, what's important to you about your insurance products? I ask a lot of clients that question, and things that I find that are important are, I want my agent to be available when I need them to be. I like having the online application features where I can just log in, pay my bill, or see my policy. If you spend too much time focusing on, here's why you should go through me, you're not really listening to figure out, hey, is this person going to be a good fit for us here? And then you
right.
lose a lot of this authenticity, and that's not right. There's a lot of other professionals in my industry that spend a lot of their time damaging other agents and other reputations, and I just don't agree with that approach. There's fantastic agents and professionals with State Farm, with Allstate, with Farm Bureau. I mean, it's an industry that's got a tremendous amount of amazing business professionals. So I focus more on, this is who I am, this is what I bring to the table. Let's sit down, have a conversation, and see if we're a good fit. And I think that that's the approach that I took in that role play model, was kind of flip the script a little bit, have a conversation. I'll share one fun thing with you, and this still resonates. I kind of chuckled a little bit when you asked earlier. So the professor threw in this element of an objection, right? You could come up with 2 objections yourself. An example would be, okay, the price for this ADP product is too expensive, the timing is not right, and then it's up for that seller to overcome that objection
Mm-hmm.
and then continue sort of with their approach. Well, he did this other thing where you had to draw one out 10 seconds before you went out into the room. And the objection that I had, and my colleague was a female friend of mine, and her objection was, hey, could we just ditch the office scene and go have this conversation at a strip club? And it kind of threw me way off guard. And I kind of just laughed a little bit and was like, I think it's much more important to have this conversation in a professional setting. I appreciate the enthusiasm. That's not really the scene that I'm looking for in terms of this conversation. But it was, it was kind of a little funny objection to have. And he kind of grabbed me on the side later, and we had a good laugh about it. And he's like, I'm not gonna lie, Danny. He's like, I'm kind of glad that one was you. I wasn't sure how other people would flounder with that one, but it was fun.
Yeah. And the one piece, that I heard that just resonated with me was the authenticity, being authentic and having that conversation, not going on, you can't rely on the scripts, and listening to people being the most important piece. I know in my business, there's different strategies that I use, walking clients through to untie, their blocks, their knots, and never has anybody ever followed the script of the strategy I'm using. That they don't have it in front of them.
I'd say that the whole college experience, I mean, there were so many classes that I just loved, and all of them focused on that emphasis of that organic, authentic, real-time experience, and it was amazing. I loved the business world, still do.
Yeah, that's what I hear, that you love what you do, which is, fantastic. Tell me a little bit about growing up, and share what you want in that, Danny. What I would like to hear is, what pieces of your upbringing do you believe enabled you to have the success that you do have, to be able to brand yourself, serve your clients,
there's a lot of conversations I've had with other family members about this too. I mean, we tie in a lot of different conversations here, right? It could be the nature versus nurture. There's so many different things to loop into this. I think one of the biggest things was I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. We actually moved several times before I was, a little kid. Born in Berwyn, lived in Cicero, Lyons, a lot of different South Chicago suburbs. Family was just very poor. My mom didn't really have a job that I can remember at the time. I know she worked at a McDonald's at one point in time. My stepdad was abusive. He did drugs. I mean, he was around my whole life. My biological father left when my mom was pregnant with me, and I've met him years later for the first time at the age of 17, I think. And, second time I ever met him was at my wedding. So I think for me, one of the biggest things was once I sort of became at an age where I was aware that these things existed and that they were not supposed to be normal, I kind of learned, okay, how am I going to find some positive influences in my life? And it sort of created this opportunity to learn how not to be, right? If I saw this behavior that I didn't want to engage in, how can I harvest that, learn from it, and sort of steer in the opposite direction? College for me was that opportunity to sort of get away from a really bad environment and sort of grow on my own, learn how to be an adult on my own. So it was an interesting experience, and I'm that kind of guy where it's like I don't hold grudges, I don't hate anybody, and I think that's important for me, is to learn how to forgive and learn how to move on.
How old do you think you were when you had enough awareness to realize that not every family lived like this? As you said, that wasn't normal.
I'll say that I think it's kind of a constant learning. I think it's sort of an opportunity to be more humble and know where you come from, right? If a toilet's dirty, I clean it. You know what I mean? Nothing's really above me in that capacity. And I think that's important to maintain. I do recall one very kind of funny experience. So my wife, Janelle, and I, we actually started dating in high school, but we met in middle school. And I can recall, I think it was probably freshman or sophomore year in high school, I had a conversation with her. I said something about Wednesdays were laundromat days. And she kind of looked at me funny, and I'm just like, what? The whole family would get together and we'd throw our laundry in a container together, and we'd walk the streets and then go to the laundromat and do our laundry. She kind of was like, well, why don't you just do it at home? And I'm like, well, we lived in a project. We didn't really have a laundry machine. And it was kind of that first experience where I'm like, okay, she comes from a sort of different household and a different upbringing. So kind of have to reel it in a little bit and learn how to, engage in that and interact and, sort of fill in the gaps a little bit. But I'd say that was kind of a big eye opener for me, was this assumptive phase, right? Well, everybody had something like that, just not the case. And I think one of the crucial pieces for us is the awareness there to say, well, how were you raised? How were you raised? And how do we want to collectively raise a child? The things that we disagree on, how do we find compromise in? And how do we, understand that and learn from it and grow as parents? So we're super excited to begin that journey. And, my other plug is that I'd say 99.99% of the time she's always right, but I will always have that 0.01 where something goes my way.
Fun, absolutely fun. You are now at Country Financial, and of course you've worked for a couple of different companies, agencies. You tell me that you're on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So just kind of tell me about your involvement in community and what you believe that provides for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a former board member for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I miss the program so much. So that was back in Illinois. I'd say that one is tied a little bit to my upbringing. How can I become that positive role model for somebody seeking it that I saw it when I was younger? So I had a little brother. His name's John. Call him JD. I mean, he's my real little brother. Truly he is. He lives with his mom and his sister Jacayla back in Illinois, in Bloomington, Illinois. So I'm not a big brother in the sense of the club rules, nor am I a board member with them anymore, but he's my little brother at heart. I still try to talk to him as much as possible. COVID hit us pretty hard, so now it's, we'll play Fortnite, we'll mic up, and we'll just kind of chat that way. So yeah, I'm a 31-year-old man who still plays video games there. I just admitted it. But yeah, I'll dwell on a couple other things. So other involvements, I'm a big advocate for my Rotary Club. So I'm the Northwest Des Moines Rotary Club. It's such a phenomenal club. I mean, they care about impacting their community. So a lot of different things we do through them focus on that element. One of my favorite ones is, again, prior to COVID, we were consistently serving meals for CFAM. It's a CFAM supper club for lower income families. And so we would serve a meal and do the blessing and do all that. It's just a great way to get in front of people and do some good in the world.
What is that, what does that do for you, participating in those kinds of activities?
And that's the thing, right? I feel guilty because I know it's for family members, but the feeling you get after doing something so positive is so rewarding. So I feel a little bit guilty in that sense, but as long as you're spreading, happiness and good in the world, then I think it's an okay thing. But yeah, I mean, it's such a rewarding and positive experience to see younger kids smiling and excited to have a good meal. I'm always the salad bowl guy, so I'm like the guy that sort of gets passed over too much. So someone's like, eat your vegetables. No, it's just such a great experience. The only reason I got the job was because I had a class that required volunteer community service hours. I don't even think I was upset about it at first. I just remember being like, okay, well, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? One of my friends said, well, I volunteered at the Children's Museum when I did it. And so I only had to do, I think, 20 hours or something. So I did it in 5 4-hour shifts at the Children's Discovery Museum in Normal, Illinois. I just loved it. I fell in love with the job. It was so much fun. The volunteer coordinator, her name is Shelly Hanover. We became really good friends, and she offered me I had to interview for it, but she was like, you're just excellent with the kids. You're one of the best volunteers we've ever had. And I think I had volunteered there for at least 80 hours after the class. I said, hey, I got to cut back my volunteer time. I have to go find a job. And she kind of was like, oh, that's interesting. Well, you should apply for a job here. And I'm like, I didn't even think of that. I mean, it was just such an awesome experience to see just kids just having so much fun in an educational setting, right? So it's sort of the power of learning through the power of play.
Right,
It was
right.
such a really cool job. I mean, I had it really made in the shade. My job was to just get to play and hang out with kids all day. Like, it was such an amazing experience. And they did so much extracurricular stuff. We let a family rent out the museum overnight, and they had this sleepover, and we played Guitar Hero on the big screen. We played hide and seek in the museum. I mean, it was such a fun, cool thing to do. And they did these Harry Potter nights, and I dressed up as Harry Potter. And so it was just one of the coolest jobs I'd ever had. So huge shout out to the Children's Museum there.
That is fun. And what I'm hearing,
Yeah.
Danny, is you're going to be an awesome dad. You're just going to play with your kids and play and play,
Yeah.
explore, and it'll be just a hoot.
Yeah, I'm working on my dad jokes. I keep dropping a couple on some friends to make sure that I've got, I'm on top of my game.
Lovely, lovely. I want to circle back to the authenticity. One of the things that I believe working with people is that we have values and we make mistakes along the way when we're out of alignment with those values. And that just helps it solidify, helps us understand more about ourselves. So if you can you tell me about a time when you knew you acted inauthentically for whatever reason and had that understanding that, boy, this doesn't feel good?
Yeah. No, I could probably fill a podcast with times that I've goofed up or made mistakes. Yeah, I think that kind of is the learning experience, right? So growing up and sort of not knowing what bad behavior really is, that could be damaging, I think, long term. And I think one of the things I can recall was I had, at a very young age, intentionally lied at a restaurant saying, hey, you messed something up to get a free meal out of it. I didn't really learn until years later that, that was not right behavior. Yeah, I'll spare you the full details, but yeah, it was.
We like details.
Yeah, it was an influence from another family member who sort of told me what to say about a mistaken order, so that way we would get a replacement order and get more food. It's sort of a highlight as to either how poor we were or how wrong we acted, I guess. Maybe a blend of both in some capacity, but I didn't really know any better. I mean, I was probably 10 or 11 at the time, and quite frankly, you kind of cling to those things as being truth, despite how bad things were with ex-stepdad. One of those things where we had food on the table, and yeah, he was a bad person, but there's so many families out there that just have it so much worse. But I didn't really know what was bad, you know what I mean, until I was older, and I was like, wait, this isn't right. This isn't how families should be. This isn't how a dad should act. And so you sort of grow from that, and you say, this is not an environment I want to be in. What am I going to do to overcome this, and how am I going to be better than this long term?
So what were your answers to those questions?
My family's such a weird dynamic. Unfortunately, I think that's becoming a lot more of the norm today. So I had an older brother, Mickey. He has the same biological father that did not play a role in either of our lives. And he was emancipated probably. I don't know if he was emancipated or if he just ran away. I think he kind of just ran away. But his stepdad was coincidentally cousins with my stepdad, a very, very bad individual. I know he had murdered a gentleman in Chicago, had spent a lot of time in prison, did drugs with my dad all over the south side of Chicago. They were just not nice people. So my older brother, Mickey, came from the very same abusive lifestyle from his mom and from his stepdad. He got away from it. He went to school. He dropped out of high school. He got his GED, and then he was taking college courses, learning. He got a job as a project manager for an IT company. Probably one of the smartest guys I know. Love him to death. He's always been there for me. He's always been that guy that says, hey, pick up a tennis racket and let's just go learn how to play tennis, basketball, all things sports. He was very much an advocate of this concept of learning through interacting with others in a competitive kind of environment. But he was just a very positive role model for me. And I just remember at a very young age looking up to him all the time and wanting to spend as much time with him as possible. And I still to this day do. He's a fantastic, positive brother, but I would say that he was probably one of the first people I can remember looking up to and saying, he looks like he's having fun in class, even though he probably wasn't, and thinking, I want that. I want a job. I want to be happy. I want to be self-sufficient. I want to do all of these things.
Someone to create that vision for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was partially due to me also recognizing that, hey, I don't have to be in this bad and forever. I don't have to be in this negative mindset all the time.
Is there anything else that you would like to share for the people that are going to be listening to this, either about business, your perspective? If you could share a nugget of something of life, what would you say?
I would just say to stay focused, be yourself, be true to yourself, stay focused, listen to others. If there's somebody you look up to, listen to them, ask them questions. I think that's the biggest pieces of advice that I could give you to hit whatever goals that you want to hit. And as far as the transparency goes, I'm an open book, and I am for that reason. I did years of counseling and years of stuff like that. I think it's important to know your past and know what you're learning from it and what you can do moving forward to, again, make the world a better place, right? That's why we're all here, to help one another grow and to make sure that when we wake up the next day, it's a better world. Yeah, I'd say that that's it. And if anybody has any questions for me, they can just Google the hashtag Danny is my agent. I'm very locatable. Reach out to me and happy to grab a coffee and, engage with whoever wants to.
That sounds great. Danny, I appreciate you being on with me today. This is Danny Mielneczek, He is a financial representative with Country Financial, and you can find him at www.dannyismyagent.com. Thank you for joining me, Danny.
Thanks.